Caitlin Collins and I are told this evening that President Trump is considering a wider shakeup among senior staff as he seeks more like-minded advisors. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster appears poised to depart soon, following months of speculation about his standing. People familiar with the matter tell CNN. Outside advisors to the president have also felt out potential candidates to replace Chief of Staff John Kelly, a person who has been approached about this position, tells CNN. Kelly's departure seen as less imminent than McMaster's, and Trump publicly praised his chief of staff on stage in California today, though he suggested that Kelly prefers life in the military. Officials said there is no solid sense of how long Kelly will last in the West Wing, where he's brushed up against members of Trump's own family, including Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Senior administration officials said that a further shakeup of senior staff could happen as soon as this week. Other officials suggesting a longer timeline, saying Trump could execute changes over the course of the next 2 months. Earlier today, Trump told reporters at the White House that he was nearing his staffing ideal.
I've gotten to know a lot of people very well over the last year, and I'm really at a point where we're getting very close to having the cabinet and other things that I want.
I should note that we are told that these removals will happen once replacements have been identified and chosen.
Obviously, that's a crucial point, right? You have to have people who have agreed to do it, who want to do it. And it's a lot of tumult they'll be walking into. Do you know, Jim, from your reporting on McMaster, who the president is considering to replace him?
This is what we're learning. The current candidates include John Bolton. He's the former U.S. ambassador to the UN under President George W. Bush. Oracle executive Safra Catz, the current director of the NSA, Admiral Mike Rogers. Also, Stephen Biegun. He's a vice president at Ford Motors and a former senior staff member in the George W. Bush administration. We should note that Bolton has met personally with the president several times, including during an Oval Office meeting just last week. He has also maintained a heavy presence on Fox News over the past week, including, we should note, praising President Trump's decision on North Korea. Aaron?
All right, Jim, thank you very much. And out front now, our experts for the hour. And thanks to all of you. Sam Vinograd, obviously, you worked as a former security advisor for Obama, for President Obama. This is a major shakeup. When you look at it, obviously, timing TBD, and we know the president likes to spring that on people with surprise, as he did this morning with Rex Tillerson. But what does this mean? McMaster, possibly Kelly. What?
I think it could all actually be a red herring, Aaron. You know, the president does not use his staff like other presidents have in the past. So we're hearing about these personnel changes. Let's take the State Department, for example. Rex Tillerson was a lame duck. He wasn't functioning as Secretary of State. So his removal may not really throw anything off course. I think the outstanding question is whether Mike Pompeo is going to be authorized to act like a Secretary of State, to suggest policy, to implement policy, or if he's just going to be another figurehead sitting in Foggy Bottom waiting for the president to make policy via tweet or from the podium or elsewhere.
Scott, you know, you've been in a White House, right? You worked for George W. Bush. The turnover here is something we've never before seen. Many multiples, 43%. And George W. Bush, I'm trying to remember between that and Obama, 6, 9, one of them, they both were in the single digits. What do you do when you're facing a moment like this? 5 people gone in the past 2 weeks, Rex Tillerson gone today, McMaster could be gone imminently, and that could be just the beginning. I mean, of course, there are still those swirling questions about Kelly himself.
Yeah, I mean, regarding specifically the Secretary of State, this is actually the one cabinet officer. There can be no daylight between the president and the Secretary of State. When the Secretary of State speaks, the world must believe he speaks for the president. Clearly, Tillerson had lost that confidence, which made him ineffective. So from that perspective, if you want the State Department, which I do, to have a bigger voice in the Oval Office and around the world, this is energizing for people who believe in the mission of the State Department. Regarding the wider issue of staffing, this president needs to have a team that he can trust. And I think, to your point, there were staffers that he's not using or not listening to. Well, it's because he didn't have confidence in them or he didn't trust them. So at the end of the day, a president
So you think this is good? All this turnover is a good thing?
I will tell you this. I think having staffers that the president trusts, that he will listen to, that he will deploy to implement his agenda is better than having a whole cabinet or a bunch of staffers that he just ignores, which is what he was doing to Tillerson.
But who's he going to trust, Paul?
Nobody.
Even some of the people he trusted have gone. Keith Schiller is gone. Hope Hicks is gone. I mean, the people he trusted aren't even sticking around.
Our president has had a longer relationship with a porno star than with his Secretary of State. Okay, that's what I'm concerned about. What this says about
I can
our
always
president.
trust you, Paul, to deliver a line like that.
It's alleged affair. I'm sure she got paid $130,000 for not having an affair with Donald Trump. But we are seeing a president in meltdown, and this has real effect. There's so many stories today. The thing that got me, Fred Pleitkin from our network, on reporting from Moscow, said that on Russian television, a big show, big popular show, he said it was their version of 60 Minutes. The anchor went on the air, talked about Tillerson placing the blame for this nerve gas murder in England on Russia.
Which Tillerson did aggressively, loudly,
Yes.
and before the White House did.
And this anchor pointed that out and said, and immediately after he was fired by Trump, then she went on to say, and I quote, "We own Trump." When the Russians are boasting to the world that they own the American president, that's a crisis. It doesn't matter which staff he has around him. We have a president who seems to be in meltdown.
Well, I wouldn't
Meltdown?
believe Russian propaganda. I don't put as much credence in it as Paul does. This was a long time coming with Rex Tillerson. He's a good man. He's
By the way,
accomplished
can I
man.
just say, the president, let's all just remember, when this all came out that he was going to fire Tillerson, maybe that was the time he should have done it. But he doesn't like it when people find out what he's doing, so he called it fake news on Twitter. And then he had to wait a month or two to actually do it because he has to be able to say it's fake news. Obviously, it was real news, and now he's finally done it.
And clearly, he shouldn't have fired him on Twitter, okay?
Yes,
But Tillerson, he didn't have any constituency in the building, didn't have any constituency in the press corps, didn't have any constituency in the Capitol Hill, and didn't have a relationship with the president. That is a failure to launch as Secretary of State. So this is a good move. Mike Pompeo actually has a relationship with the president, shares his instincts, is smart in a quick study, and has proved at CIA he can run a large organization. So, yes, there's been a lot of chaos. A lot of it isn't good. But this is a good day for the administration to get rid of Tillerson and get in someone who has a
Pompeo,
better
Mark,
chance of success.
is one of the few who really the president does seem to trust, who he didn't know before. He talked about Pompeo. Here's what he said.
I've worked with Mike Pompeo now for quite some time. Tremendous energy, tremendous intellect. We're always on the same wavelength.
Is Pompeo there for the long run then? I mean, this is the only guy he's saying these kinds of positive things about who's been.
Let me roll those dice. I mean, who knows how long he's there? Here's the thing about Mike Pompeo. He has become very close to the president, does spend an incredible amount of time with the president. Prior, though, to him becoming named the CIA director, you know, he did not know Mike Pompeo. They actually had no relationship whatsoever. The good thing about Mike Pompeo is having him there. Can he be a conduit to Congress? Because right now, there doesn't seem to be a really strong conduit. I know Paul Ryan does a good job. I understand that. However, with the issues that he's going to be dealing with, specifically when you're dealing with Iraq, Iran, North Korea, any of these foreign policy hotspots right now, you got to have a good relationship with Congress. Hopefully, Mike Pompeo can do that.
Joan.
And also, will he be able to convince the president? Pompeo actually does believe that the Russians meddled, that they meddled on the side to help Trump.
Yes.
Will he convince the president to begin to accept that and perhaps move on sanctions and perhaps take that threat seriously as the 2018 midterms approach? That would be a good thing. We're also not talking about the undersecretary who got fired for telling the truth about the fact that Tillerson heard that he was fired on Twitter. The White House put out a statement, he was told last Friday he knew, and the undersecretary said, no, actually, that's not true. He learned on Twitter. Gone. You know, other administrations, you get fired for lying. This one, you get fired for telling the truth.
For a guy who loves to say you're fired, he's pretty terrified of
Well, he
actually
doesn't like to
doing
do
it
it in
the
person,
way
does
you
he?
should do it, which
But
is
it
to
got
somebody's
done.
face.
Right.